Well, the name is Klaro, but
Yeah.
the URL klaro.com, funnily enough, is owned by a German boat charter company for some reason.
Right, okay.
So I suppose in some future series when we have enough money to buy it, hopefully they will oblige. But you never know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so, and it was interesting, like I honestly, like as I was kind of preparing for this, I was getting really excited because I was like, I didn't really know your background, honestly, what you'd done. Like we sort of, but one thing that did stand out to me was like, this guy gets shit done. That was pretty clear to me. Like, and it was interesting reading through your LinkedIn. Like, that's like the first thing on your LinkedIn, like I execute or something like this, right? Like, I was like, I agree, 100%. Like, and that's why I think it's like, and it's rare, right? People who do get stuff done. So it was clear that that was the case. But it was interesting looking at your background, and you're quite a seasoned entrepreneur, right? You've done quite a few different things. So I guess first, like, what's your background, like where you started, and then I guess your first sort of dip into entrepreneurship. How did that come about?
Yeah. I mean, you can see my obituary on LinkedIn, like all the things that I've tried and didn't work.
It looks good. That's the main thing.
Well, some of them did work, so that's good. But no, I suppose, so my background, I'm originally Swedish. I moved here, what is it now, 14 years ago? Almost, yeah.
And that's actually a question. Why did you move here? What was the...
So I was lucky enough to get a scholarship at UNSW for master's studies, and then technically I was meant to go back and finish it back home.
Yeah.
My bachelor was in engineering and industrial design, and I studied like finance and things here.
Yeah.
Meant to go back, actually gig kind of lined up at a consulting company, and then...
you worked a little bit in Sweden beforehand, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Funny, my first, it's a funny story, like my first job. So wind back a little bit. Grew up on the countryside. 250 people live where I'm from. My closest neighbor.
That's another reason we're country boy.
That's
there you
right.
go. That's why.
Right.
Good.
love the country boy label. Some people think it's very romantic and very like free, which is true. But
it's true. And it gives you. I say all the time, like it gives you a perspective on life. I think that you can't always get if you're in the city. You can go the other way. You can get the city life, but a lot of people who live in the city may never move to the country, and sort of it gives you a different perspective on life. So it's like traveling, right? So if you travel to a new place, you get a new perspective. Living in the country, growing up in the country, gives you that, I think.
Yeah, and I think I suppose you appreciate nature a lot. You appreciate that things are not just at your doorstep. Like, for example, my closest neighbor of like similar age was maybe 2 kilometers away. So you had to like bike there, and when you were, we had a church, we had a football team. That's it. And almost as many people went to church as looked at the game. So it was very small. But then, like, when you want to try other things, like try new sports or then your parents had to drive you. So my parents are amazing, but one of the things that definitely comes with that territory is you have to drive around a lot to get to places. So you kind of really need to want things. It's not like something you can just like pick up and it's easy. You have to sort of really want things. And I think that sort of continues later in life. But so I grew up there, and I always loved math. I always loved design. So those are my two favorite topics in school. Always sketching things.
Are they on the other ends of the spectrum in a sense?
I mean, in both ways, they're kind of, I think math is quite creative in some ways. Like it's a way to express, your thoughts and, objectively so that other people can understand you. And I suppose so they're both creative in one sense, but typically I suppose thought about as very different parts of the brain. But I always loved sketching, and I loved math. I was like a few years ahead in math, and so I always loved those two. And when uni came around,
I want to say that's interesting you say that. That's something I thought about a bit. Like that math is creative. I think it's like it takes a long time to realize that actually, because I think the way we learn it is very mechanical in a sense. But like I've always been like sort of fascinated, like in particularly like we touched on sort of Klaro. Like I mean, this sort of stuff when you're doing analysis.
Yes.
A lot of the time it's like you think, there must be a defined way. It's how many times have you like sat down to do some analysis and thought, let me just try this, and you're like, oh wow, that really works, right? Like, and it's like I think it's not necessarily the way that you think about math and analytics, or most people. I think it's like it's a little bit, I don't know.
It's like it's got this like connotation of right and wrong, which is also true. Like there are things that add up and don't add up, right?
Yeah.
So but I suppose that's what Klaro is a bit about, is bring play to that in the sense that you can just calculate something and see what it leads to, and it will inspire you to think differently and make a different decision. It's not about the final answer, it's about what did you learn by doing that. So I think a little bit of that probably comes into Klaro. But when uni came around, I hadn't decided on which one I liked the most. So I studied engineering and design because I really enjoy both. And I think I remember at the time my goal with my degree was I want to design the next Ferrari. Like that's what I want to do. Because a car is amazing because a car is the really complex elements of engineering and constraints that come with that. But it's also the beauty of design and expressing, an emotion in a form and a shape. And so it's like beautiful combination. And then there's a long story to why I didn't pursue that more, which has to do with my sketching teacher, and that's a fun story. We can maybe go into it, but the short version first. The short version is, it takes an immense level of talent to design beautiful cars, and it takes a commitment to that craft for a really long time. And secondly, if you want to design a Ferrari, you have a greater chance if you're Italian. I'm not Italian, so. But the long
what is it,
story,
Koenigsegg?
There's the beautiful cars. Koenigsegg's amazing.
Very different to the Ferrari, I would say, in terms of design. Very different, but But
the pursuit of excellence is very similar in some ways, just in a different way.
It's interesting you say that because I've always wondered, with the Tesla, because I guess it was the designer of the Tesla came from Mazda. And they sort of look very similar, right? I love the design of the Tesla, to be honest. I feel like it's a little bit, it could go a little bit further, but I guess it's the designer just has his way of doing it. It's interesting. Yeah. Again, that's another thing, for me as an Australian, as someone who didn't grow up, I would say, with design. In our universities, very much more software, electrical, those sorts of things. We do mechanical, but design isn't a big thing. It wasn't something that that we had a lot of exposure to. So only sort of later in my sort of career did I get exposed to some of that. But it's interesting looking at some of those sorts of things. And I guess from Sweden, it's such a big part of Swedish. I guess the Swedes are known for design, right?
Yeah, I mean the Scandinavian design, right? The essential. I'm wearing all black, there's a thing, right? But I think there's a lot of industrial design. You can't underestimate the impact IKEA has had either. IKEA is obviously a super well-known brand, and they got there by a lot of smarts and a lot of. They have so much innovation in the early days of IKEA from a business model point of view. They just made it what it is, but also continues great industrial design. You can say what you want about the price points and about, I suppose, the not so everlasting nature of some of the pieces. But,
part of the business model?
Yeah. I mean, who knows if it's engineered or not? But you can't argue with the fact that they are very clever people that work there and do a lot of really good design choices. And then you got Denmark, who's got a bunch of beautiful design brands. And also Sweden had two car brands like Volvo and Saab, which also brings a lot of industrial design to it. So there was a lot of products that were built that required design thinking, and I think that's obviously a great precursor.
That's where it's again, that's going. We talked about it a little bit before, that topic of design, and some people might look at okay, and that was me. Until we really got into it, I had a flavour of that sort of stuff, and we talked about sort of just the design schools, say with the partner in the northern German region that we have. It's that there's certain, when you look at that and having something that works really well and fits, as you said, all the constraints, it's hard to do, right? It's hard to do. And then there's another element of it where doing that and then making it, say, beautiful. That's another element. I remember, I think I mentioned this to you, I remember it was my first time in Sweden actually catching the train from the airport and the little leather handle on the thing. It's like a little square, I don't know, a centimetre by a centimetre or something, maybe 2 centimetres, leather. You wouldn't see this here.
No.
This is Sweden. Right? I just thought it was interesting. So I guess, that whole kind of design aspect, it's a fascinating one.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I mean, it's also, I think, people think that people separate design and engineering as separate traits, but they're really part of the same. It's just, what way do you like expressing yourself? Are you more of an artist in the sense that you're drawing, or are you more of a structured person who likes, if you're coding, that gives you some constraints on how you operate, but it also allows you can create whatever you want from that. It's also a creative expression. So they're not too far apart, honestly. To me, that's why I couldn't choose. When I went into, I was like, I need to do both, because I feel like to do a great product or to also sort of have an idea come to reality, those two are really part of the same course.
As I said, I harp on it, but it took me a while to realize that. It took me quite a while to realize that something that at the kind of nth degree, they are kind of creative pursuits as well, say coding or building or whatever. Whereas I think you do definitely get that. I guess from the early academic phase of your life, it's like, there's an answer to the problem sort of scenario where I had a bit of exposure to that. Like my first project was like building loudspeakers, and it was
cool.
What are the constraints? It's like, well, you can do anything, but it's what do you want to do? You got to answer that question as well. Why do you want to do all those things? And it took me a long time to sort of, I would say, drill down on some of those decisions, because it was it was the first exposure to that, and then it's kind of evolved through the business and doing all those sorts of things, and meeting. I think particularly Europeans, the Europeans I've met have really influenced me. I mean, obviously my co-founder Marcel, he's German,
yeah, of course.
So they've given me. I've really enjoyed. It's kind of broadened my view a lot in terms of how to look at those things, and it's interesting you say that. That's why I said design and math. I would say some people may think of them as very other opposite ends of the spectrum, but in some senses they're part of the same kind of. If you're building things, you've got to think about them in the same way.
That's right.
So then you did finance, a master's in finance, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, UNSW. I was meant to, technically it's only study abroad studies, because I was meant to finish it. Europe is 2-year master, so then I was meant to go back and finish it there, but then there's a long story there how. But I ended up at the Iconic, basically. The store is one of the first companies.
And how was that? I mean, that's a huge, successful Australian company as well. So how was? I mean, you had a few roles there as well, so I guess you probably learned a lot about, I feel like maybe growth. That was the big thing that they were going through at that phase, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel so lucky that I was able to have the opportunity to work there, because like I had already figured out from, so I'm not going to design the next Ferrari, but where will my creative pursuits continue? And at my bachelor, I also did some consulting at a student consulting company, which I think the equivalent here is 180-degree consulting. Like this sort of, you're a student, but at the same time you can work for companies and do consulting type work. So I actually did a bunch of design works there, where I designed a prostheses like soft tissue support and a new mailbox, a digital mailbox thing. So I designed a bunch of stuff, and then that allowed me to, I suppose, pursue some more of the entrepreneurial ways of applying your creativity. And to me, when I came to Australia to do that 1 year of studies, I did what all exchange students do, which is to start a business.
Move to Bondi?
No. That is what they actually do, yeah. And I was like, I'm going to start a business. It's
correct. Actually, I read that. I said, look, go through your background. I saw like it was like something like saying, what was it? 30?
The entrepreneurial chase is what it was called.
What was it? Like 60% of small business entrepreneurs are immigrants or something like that. I don't want to, something along these lines.
Maybe, I can't recall too much of, but what I remember was, so it was just it was a new model for recruiting talent for companies. Instead of just reading a CV, you can see them in live action. It's sort of like The Amazing Race meets The Apprentice, and they sort of shows these sides of them that allows them to understand, this is the right candidate for us. Didn't work. Anyways, I loved it, and I was like, wow, I love this entrepreneurial pursuits. This is where my creativity, this is the best way for me to express myself. Obviously, software and design and all this as part of building products. And then I got the opportunity to join the Iconic, and I remember I was meant to finish my master's. I had this high-profile consulting gig lined up, and I called my parents and said, look, I'm going to stay in Australia. And they were like, what? You're going to stay? Yeah, I'm going to stay in Australia. I really like this. And I actually canceled my flight and decided to then join the Iconic. And
I must say, like for like people like from Europe, again, having spent a lot of time in Europe, again, that Australian perspective, like Australia is so far away.
It is very far away.
we don't realize it, because everywhere we fly is like 12 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours. But it's like, when I speak to people in say Germany, you should visit Australia. It's like, but it's like so far. Whereas like I can fly 8 hours and go here and there and everywhere. So it's like, you're moving to the other side of the world now.
Yeah, I mean, my mum, it took her a while to get used to the idea. I mean, she was very happy always for me. Like they've always been supportive of you do what makes you the best version of you. But of course, it's hard for a mother to see, my son is going to stay on the other side. But she jokingly says nowadays, well, I had 2 other kids, so that's all right. And, I think also they like it now because they can come visit. And it's a nice place. But so I ended up joining the Iconic as initially a head of offline. So I was going to launch the brand. And
interesting title, that, because I saw that head of offline, even though it was online store.
Yeah, so we had
offline marketing.
Yes, we had online. We called it online and offline marketing. So like that was a delineation that was done back. Remember, this is like 10 plus years ago. Like this is a long time ago. But that was the delineation. It was offline and online. And then I had about 40% of the budget, and my counterpart, John, had 60% of the online. So he had 60% of the budget, which was the online budget.
Yeah.
So I spent it on TV, on buses, on radio, on partnerships, on magazine inserts. We also actually created our own iconic magazine, like our own like shopping magazine that we sent as part of orders. And so I was responsible for selling ads in that magazine and sort of like working with the editor to publish it. So it was a lot of those initiatives that was under my remit.
Yeah.
But you can also, this is probably
How did you feel kind of doing that? Because I guess, did you have the experience to do it? That were you
No,
kind
I
of
had no
guessing,
experience in
or
that.
you were just seeing what worked and spending some money here, see what works? Like how was that
I
experience?
mean, what was I, 21, 22? I don't know how old I was. And I had like, at some point, like million plus budget a month.
Yeah.
Like, and I had never done marketing. I'd done no marketing background.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my boss, I was like, why are you hiring me for this? Like, I haven't done any of this. He's like, well, you did this very well. You did this very well.
Seems like you can get shit done, so give it a go.
Yeah, so it was like, and then later on, because I went to his wedding not too long ago, and I was like, did you believe this? Like, yeah, it was a bit of a gamble, but it worked out. So it was funny because my background before then, so I'd done my, design and engineering bachelor, done some studies here in finance, and I worked for a short while back home at a nuclear power plant for 6 months.
I saw
So
that.
that was the only experience I had, and now I'm going to launch a fashion brand.
And doing what? Like a project manager, was it?
Yeah, so I was managing the mechanical workshop at the nuclear power plant. So as you obviously have to produce a lot of new pieces and parts to like make the whole show run.
Yeah.
So I was in charge of the planning and dishing out jobs, and like we had either the whole job as like this was the workshop had to produce a certain piece, but we also did installations and like.
Yeah.
I remember being part of the biggest project I was part of was changing the turbine, which is a massive thing, right? Because that's what generated all the electricity and stuff. That was a big job, and it was like 190, I can't remember how many days it was, but we were, the whole project was off by 1 day, which I thought was amazing for such a big project.
Yeah. Well, I actually, my first job, industrial experience, was at a coal power plant, I think like a nuclear power plant. But similar sort of like project manager. You don't realize like under the hood how much design and how much fabrication and stuff goes on in those places. You think that they just sit there and run, but they're always optimizing things, trying to, I remember like, it was like, we were putting like a sensor, we had to hang it from the roof and all this sort of stuff. And it's like all these things that happen. They're fascinating places in that sense. It's not somewhere you would think that design happens, for example. And then the other big part of my background was mining, and that was where they did a lot of this sort of stuff, like project planning. So you learn a lot from that sort of stuff, right? How to like, you've got a lot of, I think it was one of the more exciting things to do was plan the shutdowns. In those environments where it's because like, like you said, like, if you're off by a week, I mean, that's not going to work, man. Like, you've got to turn that thing back on, right?
But it's like to your point about being creative. Like you have these places they were built so long ago. I mean, we're talking decades and decades, and then some pipe is breaking, and you're like, it's got a weird bend, and now you got other things that have been built around. So like they come. I remember like the guys come to the office and like, hey mate, it's like, hang on, slams like this big bend on the table, bang. What do you reckon? Can you sketch something like that up? It's like, so you have to like work in CAD and stuff.
Yeah. And you're there, I mean, this is a similar experience for me. You're there, how old were you then?
What was I, 20, I think it was 20 years old.
Yeah. So that's what I started in mining when I was like 19, 20. And it was like, you've got these guys who've been in the industry for 20 years coming in. And, looking at you like this kid, like, and I was like such a kid, like doing these sorts of things. And like, but it was, I mean, the amount you learn in those environments is incredible, right?
Yeah, and you're definitely nervous, right? But then, I don't know, you have to also like play to it a bit. So I remember confidence. Display confidence. Like you kind of have to level with them. Because they also have their ideas. And like, so you just got to level. It's like general with people, just got to level with people. And I remember, so we were sitting in the office and then you had the people on the floor. They were like the people like in the CNC machines and doing stuff. And we were all part of the same, but it was like the floor, and then you had the office was a little bit higher. So it was like, you guys don't do any work, that sort of thing. And then you had and then
when you walk out of the workshop, they're like, oh, look at this guy.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, it's
this
half
kid's
joke,
telling me what to do, right? Yeah.
Half joke, half true, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Then you have like they had their own lunchroom at the top or whatever, and then they had the lunchroom. But I always liked sitting in the lunchroom on the floor because I thought, I want to build a relationship. I remember sitting there by myself first, and then like some people started sitting next to you, and they were like joking with you, like, oh, you guys up there, you just come here, you're new on the block, you don't know anything. It's like, well, it's quite funny because you've been here for a long time, you still don't know anything. And like, it's just kind of joke, and they're like, oh my good one. And so then it's funny how that matters way more than.
I learned so, like, I'm so thankful. It's interesting you had a similar experience. I'm so thankful that experience I had back then, just to learn about how to work with people, how big business runs, the people aspect of it, and those sorts of things. And I guess it's I think it's a big I don't know, for me maybe it's sort of I always talk about connecting the dots. It's like everything sort of leads into another thing, and that you can always I look at an experience like that. Oh, you worked at a nuclear power plant? What the hell is that? But you're like, but like it all kind of under the hood. A lot of when it comes to people and operations, a lot of it's the same sort of stuff. It's just different things that you're doing, right? So it's
all experience is value. Like you might not know it at the time, but you're just building this bank of those experiences, and you never know it's going to be helpful. Sometimes it just is. Like you should never discount an opportunity to learn.
So I guess then the entrepreneurial journey. I guess your first like sort of dip into that was it XP?
Yeah, XP. Yeah. I mean, I suppose you can say the first dip was probably when I was a kid and I was like 9, 10, and we have this thing called Christmas magazines in Sweden, which is like selling newspaper story, right? Like at Christmas, all these like different comic books and stuff, they release like certain mags that have certain comic strips in them. Now it's because everything's online. But then also like little gnomes and Santas. You cycled around all the neighborhood and sold Christmas stuff. So I remember doing that, really liked it, and continued and like built some websites. But then
so it was like physical sales, like going
physical
around.
sales, like knocking doors.
Interesting,
right? And you're a little kid, and you're like cycling, and then you have to knock the door of strangers, and like, hey, do you want to buy some Christmas stuff? So I guess you confront your nervousness doing that. That was pretty helpful. But so
how old were you then?
I can't remember. I was probably between 10 and I don't know, 10, maybe 9 and 12 or 9 and 13. For a few years. The parents have to be, because again. Remember, I grew up on the countryside, so the closest house was a kilometer bike ride. So you had like a kilometer minimum kind of between every house. So if you want to make sales, you have to cycle quite a lot. So they obviously have to be comfortable with your kid being on the road and cycling. But it would have been around that time. And it was very helpful. And then like you get tips sometimes. And then the best part is, once you've sold it, you then obviously take their order. So then you have to go and deliver everything. So you have the two aspects of the customer cycle, which is like, I sold it to you, but then you have to come back and deliver it. So then you have to make sure it's in good condition, like, hey, it's your stuff, very happy. And then you might do a little extra thing, like a little, I don't know, maybe you made some Christmas chocolates at home and put it in the bag, like, hey, I made this one extra for you for being a customer, and like learn these little things. And then they would like, oh, I have something for you as well. And like, so it's good sort of, that was probably my start. But in a modern sense, in an adult sense, so the entrepreneurial chase that I mentioned before. But then the proper venture was probably XP, which was a multimedia platform for museums and galleries. So remember, again, this is a long time ago. This is 2014, I think, even earlier. Around that time. So 10 years ago, where you had the MCA and the Australian Museum launching their own apps and stuff. But they're expensive to build, like several hundreds of thousands to build an app, which really just played audio. So if you were a medium-sized gallery or museum, you wouldn't have a chance of doing that because it's just too expensive. So we thought, why won't we build a SaaS platform that allows you to, create these things through the
And was that here in Australia?
That was in Australia.
Right.
Which, we were two of us, me and Maxim. It was good. Like, we learned a lot from it. But what we also learned, like, even if we had a really good product, and those that used it loved it. But then it became obvious that even though museums and galleries were saying like, oh yeah, we absolutely need this, we need multimedia, absolutely, like the big guys are doing it, we need it. And then you have the solution, and then they don't use it, and you're like, hey, why are you not using it? Oh, we don't have time to record all the content. It's like, so you really want it, but you don't have time to talk about the thing you're passionate about. And like they felt like it was too much work. It's like, so what we learned, like, I mean, the need probably wasn't as strong enough, right? Like, but also many of the people, they're just creatives. And like, they're just like, I like having my gallery, I like having this. It will be a nice thing to have. I just want to show my stuff. So that was not a good business. So we ended up selling that for like scraps to someone.
Yeah, right.
It was actually a non-profit company, kind of like they just wanted to give away most of the tech.
Still sold it. That's good. You know,
Yeah,
scraps,
but most important for us was like the customers had a home. You know, we didn't want to just shut it because there were some people who loved it. They were like, no.
Yeah.
So we couldn't make it a business. So we were like, well, we're selling to this company. They're going to take care of you. They're going to probably keep this for a while.
Right.
But then probably migrate you onto their platform. Maybe we'll do something. But they were like, yeah, that's cool, guys. We're happy with that. Thanks for.
How did you? I guess probably when you started, you had. How did you feel about that? Like as an endpoint for that business, and what was your thought process at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like I thought it was a good decision. Like it was clear this wasn't going to become a big business. It was clear also that the problem wasn't as prevalent as we thought necessarily. So it made a lot of sense. It's a little bit similar with, said then Balto, the courier company I had as well, which was, we started off, that was actually, so after XP, which was just sort of on the side, then I left the Iconic, did some work for another startup for a bit as a marketing director, but then what I wanted to do that I saw at the Iconic was that e-commerce was obviously becoming the norm. And some problems with e-commerce had been solved, like you can shop on mobile, payment is very seamless, but delivery, you still didn't know when you were going to get your parcel. I mean, ironically, to this day, that's still maybe not always the. But that was I was like, the logistics experience is not very good.
Yeah.
Why is that? And you look into it, and we work with Australia Post because Iconic is one of the biggest e-commerce customers. They probably still have, what do I know? But at the time, we were like flagship stuff. So we were working with them a lot on a lot of stuff, but they just couldn't do certain things and I saw that it was the technology that was the problem. So then before building software, I thought, what is it like to be a driver? I should know what it's like before building software for these people. So then I just started this courier company, just do some delivery to learn. And I did it for HelloFresh, and they were like, after like first time I did it, like I was like, hey, I'm gonna do it for you. I'll charge the same as the other guys. And if I don't deliver on time, I won't charge. And they were like, oh, okay, that's a good deal. So I did that. And then after like doing it for 2 weeks.
How did that work out initially?
I mean, there's a lot of fun stories there. One of the stories was like, they came back like 2 weeks later. Hey, can you do more of this? I was like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, do you have more vans? I was like, no, but I can. So then I incorporated and made a company, and it actually became a thing. And funny enough, week 4, week 5, delivering for them. So at that time, they had lots of small contractors, and they all had work, right? And HelloFresh was one of the biggest companies, so you wanted their contracts. They also paid much better per delivery than they do today. Like that was a story over time where these big customers became bad customers because they didn't want to pay you enough, so you could have more volume, but you almost made no money.
What year was this? When was it?
2015.
2015, yeah, right. Yeah.
And one story after a couple of weeks in, we had some drivers. I had 2 drivers, I believe, or 3 that were driving on behalf of me. So you found them through Gumtree and stuff. And then
you'd find the drivers on Gumtree.
Yeah, on Gumtree.
Yeah, right. Yeah, interesting.
So I subcontracted to them. I then get a phone call from HelloFresh, like the operations manager is like, hey, look, you guys haven't shown up on your runs. And I was like, oh, well, they should be on the way. Like I'll call. They were like 10 minutes late or something. Called and can't get a hold of them. And then he's like, 20 minutes gone. He's like, calls again, like, hey, look, I have to call them because they have emergency. They have providers that have drivers available on standby, which they obviously pay for, so they pay more. But it's just so that they will not have these situations where some stuff just won't get delivered. So he was like, hey, I got to call this service. And, you know, I was like, give me 10 minutes. Like, and I just couldn't get a hold of them. And I was like, hey, I had to call them back. It's like, sorry, I'll let you down. Charge whatever extra fee you have to pay versus what you would have paid me. Put that on me. I'll pay for it. I really wanted to deliver for you again. But yeah, I just can't. Sorry, like I've screwed up here, you know. So like he was like, "Cool, like, no problem." I got to continue later on as well. It was fine. But then after maybe about 15 minutes after 20, I get a phone call from a random number. So I pick up. Hey, it's Nik speaking. Hey mate, how are you going? I was like, well, I don't know. Like, who are you? It's like, so yeah, I think you know who I am. I was like, no, I don't. Well, I'm the guy who HelloFresh called today for their emergency drivers, and the emergency drivers go in there right now, or my drivers, and they were your drivers. So he was basically saying like, don't get on my turf, take my drivers who were subcontracting for him.
Yeah, right.
And it was like, you know, if you ever try that again, I'm gonna go you, I'm gonna do this. And it's like really...
It's like a mafia courier.
Absolute mafia courier on my...
Yeah,
he was like, don't even get near this. Like he was obviously making money on this.
Yeah, right.
But I know from becoming good friends with the operations manager at HelloFresh that they were one of the worst performers in a way. So he was just like, you know, threatening me, like, you know, like, don't come here. And then, yeah, I fast forward 6 months and he was completely out and I'd taken all his runs and more than that. But it was like...
Nothing like competition.
So I was like...
Nothing like competition.
If anything, I was like, cool, all right, this is probably worth poking in. I mean, it's just business. So I was like, I'll continue.
Yeah. And so how long into the business was this? It was like
4 weeks in.
4 weeks in.
Six
Right.
weeks
Because
in.
it was a little while, right? This business you ran.
Yeah, for like 3 years.
3 years. Yeah, right.
And I had a business partner as well for a bit. Like, and then we ended up selling that, which was, you know, a good decision at the time. Like I said, the big companies started paying you less, and it became...
Just before, I just want to make sure the battery's still working. Let me just make sure. We can cut this, because we're going well, mate. But yeah, we're good. We're good. All right. Yes. So you sort of you
for 3 years.
Yes.
And then we sold it, which was a good decision. And, you know, part of it was because it was getting competitive. Like, the margins were getting squeezed because over that period, the big companies grew and grew, and they...
You didn't raise in this business at all, right? This was all bootstrap, sort of.
Bootstrap, all of that. And, you know, we made...
And what were your plans during that business as well?
Well, I mean, initially it was just going to be a learning experiment, and then it's so the first year we turned over 1 million, the second year 2.5, and the third year we were on track for 5 million. So we doubled pretty much every year.
Yeah.
And we sold, but it was just the margin was getting squeezed. So we were like, hey, this is the right decision. Also, like for me, I'd started with the ambition to build software to help the industry as a whole, not to necessarily do the deliveries. So for me, I was also at the time working on premonition with my business partners there, and it was just too much to be involved into at once. So there was also, I had a business partner who ran pretty much all of Valter for a period, but still, it was just that it was not the right decision to continue in both, and so we both decided.
How many people were you when you got out of it? So you sold it?
We sold it.
So how many, like, because I guess you had the delivery drivers, but how many full-time staff was it at the time?
Less than, it was around 5 maybe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool.
In head office.
And doing, you know, getting up to 5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were doing some, and we had 99.8% on time, 82%, which is like, you know, pretty good.
I know nothing about the logistics space.
I mean, in most places it's unheard of. So, so it's a very good standard, which is also why we won business, because the promise was 99% on time, and if we don't, you don't have to pay. That was the USP.
Yeah,
so that worked well, but then premonition was the main focus.
Yeah, and then that's, I guess, you know, you that was a big journey for you as well, premonition, right? So that was, I guess, you know, how we met, and you know, I had a friend working there, Matt.
Yes, that's right.
And sort of introduced us. And yeah, I guess you were. When did that start? That company?
2015.
2015.
But the guys existed. So I had 3 business partners, Matt, Ken, and Brad. They had existed as another entity before.
Yeah.
And then they had. It was essentially initially targeted at non-profits to help them, because it was specifically for the where, you know, the Oz Harvests of the world, like that's food sector of like produce is getting it thrown away.
Yeah.
And then food aid.
It's funny the relationship between, because we use Oz Harvest, and it's just interesting going back, like touching the premonition stuff, because like, so this was, I guess, 2015. Matt started there pretty early on as well, right? Very early on.
Meeting him at a networking event.
Yeah, and I remember what was I doing at the time? 2015. I remember I was staying at his place, sleeping on the floor at his place at one stage. He had a place in Alexandria, and he was biking to Fishburners at the time, which was in Piedmont.
That's right.
And it was like I knew nothing about startup at that stage. Really, I was kind of like I was in engineering. I must have been transitioning between. I was working in an acoustics firm. I'd just done a program at Cochlear. I was, you know, about to start the grad program there. It was like he was kind of just at that journey, and I remember going to Fishburners and like, there's this co-working space, and like this was so foreign to me at the time. Like, it was really like completely like I didn't know what the hell was going on. Like so it was fascinating, and then fast forward kind of like, you know, a few years time, you know, met you guys, and sort of you guys were on that journey, and we'd raised some money and talking to you guys, and you know where you were at. It was fascinating. Yes. Now you say you were doing some stuff at Oz Harvest. We were using Oz Harvest to get rid of our produce because, you know, we collect a bunch of fruits and whatnot. So
we're actually not doing work with Oz Harvest. We're actually doing work with Food Bank. But they are obviously in a similar. I mean, they are different, but they're in a similar food aid industry. But so Food Bank's there, and then they did it for because the problem of food aid is not a problem of food. We have more than enough food. It's a problem of logistics.
Yeah, right.
Can you pick up the food at the right time and get it to the right person at the right time in a time span of food not going bad?
And make it economical.
Yeah, and then making it, of course.
Yeah.
But so there was a problem of logistics, and the guys built some algorithms that helped that, and then they realized that this has commercial opportunity. So then they started Premonition.
Yeah,
I joined.
Yeah. So what was, and that was, because I remember Matt talking about it at the time. It was like, I guess the algorithm that was it was kind of the traveling salesman problem.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and it was kind of, you guys had a unique way of solving that.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Because the traveling salesman is obviously an algorithm, a problem that's been known for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's what you call like an NP hard problem. Like it's like there's computationally there's too many solutions to find the optimal solution with reasonable compute.
Yeah.
So you have to make decisions on the algorithm, how it sort of traverses through the possible solutions and finds the most appropriate one.
Yeah.
And our algorithm was designed to be fast. So we would, if we were going up, say against some other algorithms, say called best in industry types, they might go for longer and they might find a better solution in the time. But ours was super quick. So you could find like really, if you didn't have like, say, 200 plus drivers, then no problem. Like we would just find a near best solution.
Yeah.
But
what's like, I guess, I mean, the Matt's nerd in me is very interested in this topic, because we didn't talk, like, so what, like, I guess there's the optimal solution, which can be found or can't be found.
It can be found.
It can be found.
With enough time, you can always find it.
And then there's kind of I guess, like, well, how much compute do you want to spend on it to try and find the optimal solution? And there's maybe a difference between there, right? So
the algorithm is like, it's a bit like a Google search algorithm, like sort of like you make some trade-offs with like, how do you find what you want to show for the first 10 results? It's got some hierarchy, it's got some rules, it's got some direction on how to look for solutions. So
and I mean, I must say, like, I mean, I remember thinking about it at the time. It was fascinating that, like, I guess you guys are having good success, like, it was an Australian company, like solving some of these interesting problems. I mean, and also, like, this must be a problem everywhere in the world.
Yeah, when we had customers in many parts of the world, including towards Europe way, where and we spent a lot of time in Dubai.
That's what I remember. And I was interested to talk a little bit about that, because I know you guys were looking at international expansion, but it was
right.
Did it go well, or didn't
we expanded? Like, I would say we probably didn't need to expand. We had enough here, but we did, and then we were enterprise focused. And when you support enterprise at that level, you need also to have the bodies to like help the transformation, because the real hard part is not technology. The technology is there, but change is very hard with people. So I think we learned a lot about how hard that is and how you need boots on the ground. And we also didn't feel like we wanted to take our product down a direction where we will be ready for distributors because that also takes a lot of work to just have your product ready for distributors and to on-sellers and service providers. That's a whole different investment. So we were like, we don't want to make that investment to enable them. We don't want to have presence overseas, so we'll dial back to Australia and New Zealand. And so there was a good move. And
was the ambition still there to go back to that at some stage? It was, And
then obviously we sold to Shipper, but it was always that the product was like world leading in a lot of ways, so we knew that we could go there. But,
So how long? I guess you're at Premonition for?
Well, 8 years.
8 years. Wow.
That's if I include the post-acquisition time.
And how long was the company around for?
About 8 years as well.
8 years. So you started pretty soon after.
I was like 6 months in, I think.
6 months in.
Since they started. Funny enough how it worked, because I was a fish bonus at the same time. I was doing the Balto logistics thing, and then I announced to the fish bonus community, like, oh yeah, I'm going to now pursue the software thing. Like you all know, I was just doing this to learn, and like, I'm going to build a software company. We're going to change the logistics experience. And then Brad, one of the 3 co-founders of Premonition, we'd obviously known each other at that point. He was like, why haven't you talked to me about this? I was like, well, you're building a bunch of algorithms and I'm all about the customer experience and it's about the user. It's like, well, actually, that's kind of what we're about too. It's just that we think algorithms is very important to do that. And I was like, okay, let's have a chat. And that's when we decided we should just join forces. And I have to say the Premonition team, like, amazing caliber of talent. In terms of technical ability as well, specifically, it's like best, dare I say, best in Australia. And
right.
Like
that's what
at least what I've seen in the startup scene.
That's what
who I work with. Like, they are. I mean, you can never say best always, because time always changes. But like, they are top stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's why I thought to be like, because that, as you said, the traveling salesman problem's been a problem since like we'll deliver parcels. Like, it's the age of time. Like, I
think they want Nobel prizes for that stuff.
Yeah. And so like to have, I just thought it was it was super fascinating that Australian company and had having success in that space, and obviously there's. I guess there was probably competitors overseas, chasing other markets and stuff like this. But I'm always excited and passionate about technology companies in Australia who are having success, and it was quite interesting watching your guys' journey for sure.
Yeah, no, it was great. I think I'll take one thing away. It was a lot of things, but one thing that I went into was thinking that I am not technically good enough to build product.
Interesting.
And I'm an engineer.
Yeah, right.
I think I just have very high standards for stuff, and then going out of it, I didn't write. I think I wrote one line of code just for shits and giggles. What
did it do?
I committed one PR.
What was it? What happened?
I can't even remember. Like it was said a Friday. Just
put a comment in or something.
Yeah, it's not even on my GitHub account. It was someone's Git. It was just having a beer, but it was fun. But working with them, learning how to architect, how to think about first principles, how to think about first-class objects in a system, and how to just approach problems. I picked up so much from working with them.
Interesting.
And it's something I take with me in all my product building moving forward. Like they were just like so good at that.
It's interesting. That's good. It's a good segue, I guess, in the sense of, I think that's often a challenge, finding the trade-off between, obviously from a business point of view, you always want to do things fast. You always want to do things as quickly as possible, but that technical, and we've sort of, done some things well and made some mistakes in that sense and, wound things back. And tech debt's always a challenge, right? It's like you can move quickly, build things fast, but not necessarily build them well.
Yes.
And then, pay for it later.
Yep.
And that might be the right decision to make, but sometimes I think maybe you can make that decision and not be aware of it.
Yep.
And then what that's where we are, is it? Yeah. Well,
that's right.
You made that decision back then. So it's like, well, if you and that's kind of, I guess, we've sort of reset a little bit in what we're doing and sort of really thinking for us, like long term, it's like, okay, build it right. It's gonna work. It's gonna scale. It's gonna go really well, because you can cut some corners in earlier, which you have to, in a sense, when you're building a product. But beware of that trade off. So it's interesting. I guess it sounds like and I got that sense that you guys were really deep into what was going on there, and it's sometimes, I think, not necessarily seen in a business from the outside. Like, okay, if you have a good technical product, what does that mean? It's very hard to, sometimes it can be hard to communicate, but it's like, and because you only see the problem when it's too late, and when you're trying to scale and it's biting you, right? So interesting.
It always gets reduced in the public space because you can't explain it to, because not necessarily everybody even cares.
Yes.
But also like not everybody understands the concept. So it's like, it always gets reduced to like, it works really well. It's such a good product. Like that's all that it, but it's like, man, the amount of trade-offs you have to do to make that.
And the amount of hours and the amount of, exactly 100%, the decisions that go into some of those things. It's like, you don't see it. It's really, I guess, something, if I think from a, if you are thinking about sort of building that, and I guess you're going to be thinking about
all the time now.
Like we talked about it in the early, like when we caught up, it was like getting that right. It's like you'll make that trade off in whatever way you see fit, but it's like again, I think you're conscious of those trade offs that you make. Is like if you choose a path technically and you sort of it can bite you in a sense, and I would say we had, as I said, some of those challenges, some of the areas we did well, and some we tried to scale too quickly, and it hurts you big time, especially if customer delivery depends on that.
Yes.
If you're in a point where I need to now deliver to a customer and you can't do it because your technical architecture is holding you back, it seems like we'll deal with the tech debt. It can bite you really hard. If you get to that point where like it's just you're getting momentum and you have to wind it back, not good, right?
I mean, like anyone building products in the enterprise space knows what this is about.
Yes. And that's why it's so slow in a sense. It can be so slow because it's like, it takes so long, but you got to get that right. Otherwise, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, and like you end up with the Homer car, right? Where the episode of Simpsons where Homer gets to design his own car, and it becomes this abomination of a car that no one else wants. Just like 5 horns, like huge cup holders.
And it's a point where you literally have to start again, right?
Yeah.
Tear the thing to the ground and start again. That's what you have to do, right?
So you can't I think if I take 2 learnings away from like working with enterprise customers, there's probably, there's a lot of them, but if 2 sound bitey ones is like avoid the Homer car and look for the Martin Luther King moment. You know?
Yeah.
Like, so
What do you mean by that?
the Homer car is like, the customer, if you let the customer design your product, it's gonna be bad. And it's like the customer might love it, but then you definitely can't resell it to anyone else.
Yes.
And even then, most likely it's only the person at the customer who's gonna like it, because they have some view. And then you try to get other people to use their Homer car, which they supposedly all should like, and no one else. So it's had so many levels of problems with that. And then the MLK moment is, the whole like, I have a dream. There's a moment in time when a customer sees not just the product, not just the immediate benefits or whatever, but they see the vision and they internalize it. They go, I am going to make this a reality. Like I have this vision, this dream, and unless they have that, like emotionally, I find it's always, I would say it's a red flag if they don't. It's a green flag if they do. Because that means that they will understand and see beyond the change management, see beyond the challenge that will come, because they're trying to make this vision a reality. And if I look back at the customers that were super successful at Premonition, there were always these people.
Yep.
Reese is a very good example where the product lead, Mark Mossbauer there, he was like that. And you could see that he had a vision and he pushed through a lot of stuff. And eventually, it turned out greatly successful for them. But it was because he pushed through with his vision. So I think that's very important.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more.
Have you experienced a similar thing?
100%. Yeah, with those enterprise clients, you need to have champions.
Yeah.
You need to have product 100%. Champions internally. We've had a few good ones, particularly in the Woolworths environment, who have, in the early days, we had a guy who just really championed that, and were just innovators too. They were innovators in the organisation. They were people who wanted to get stuff done. We're willing to push through the politics, and we're willing to just make that thing their baby. But to your point, the challenge with that is the Homer car.
Yes, they can have the vision, but they can't design the car.
Finding that line is difficult, very difficult. And obviously the carrot is the big rollout, the enterprise, the revenue that you're going to get from enterprise, and it's always just that little bit further that you get there, and then it's like, well, yeah, you might end up with the Homer car sort of scenario, but yeah, 100%. You need that. I think we learned that early on. I think it was something that but it doesn't. I think you can definitely underestimate the time it's going to take for an enterprise to move, and startups live in weeks and months, and enterprises live in quarters and halves. Yeah, so it's a different timeline in a sense. So you got to be careful of that, right?
100%. And I think on that, customers will always express themselves in solutions. This is one of the core, I think, learnings from studying industrial design. Customers always say what they want, and they sort of, so if you're driving a car, for example, and you have a scenario where they're driving through rain, they would say, I need better windshield wipers. No, you need clear sight. And let me work out what that is for you. Same thing with these enterprise customers. I need this feature, I need this product. No, what you need is to take your organization from here to there. We're going to do that. And here's how we're going to do that. So you always have to just bring them back to your job is the vision. Your job is to tell the story and get there. And you can obviously have input. I love your input. Yeah. But you're not designing the car.
Yeah, and we can talk about it.
But it's hard. It's
maybe do that. I talk about it for but there's that balance of also then having that have trust in the brand as well, because the thing is you can say those things and it's because you've got to come as, hey, I know you really want this, but we really recommend this. Yes. From our experience. And then they say, well, what's your experience? That's where brand really matters.
Yes.
What you're doing in that space, and what's your, when you're selling to enterprise, it's so hard. It's so hard to get over that hump.
Yes.
Because it's who are you to tell them what to do and what the right way of doing things is? And that's where it's that, I think that brand aspect, if you're a startup in the enterprise space, is really critical. We did that really well in the early phase of our business. We sort of wound back a bit, now we're kind of going hard again, because it's absolutely critical if you want to sell. Because it's just those little moments where it's we want to do this. And it's that's going to cause you a lot of pain. You don't really want to do it, but it's if they're the customer at the same time. So how do you strike that balance, right? And so you've got to balance that out and build a relationship with those champions in the organization, right? So
I think you're right. The brand is very important. The trust they can put in you. I think another technique that works quite well is the reverse sell, which is how real estate agents, very common one used in real estate, where you walk into a home and you can tell maybe the prospect thinks it's a bit too much or it's a bit more, but it's on the edge, And then they would say, oh well, we're only looking for serious buyers who really want to make use of all this, and they basically paint the picture of like who you want to be. So you can do the same reverse sell in enterprise sales in the sense that you go like, look, it's great that you're excited. This is good, but look, we only look for people who are actually serious about this.
Our other customers are doing X, Y, Z.
Yes. The only customers that look 3 years ahead, and only customers who want to invest. If you're not investing, we shouldn't do it. We only look for people that want to be the number one.
Yeah.
So if you don't, if that's not you, no. We definitely want to do that.
Yeah.
We are strategic. We are number one. We are. It's like. Oh, well, then that's when you wind in. Well, you have to make this investment in change. You have to do this. Then you wind in all the things. Okay, well, if you want to be that person, that's what these people do.
Yes.
They do these things. So you say you want to be that person. Well, they do these things.
Yeah.
So you kind of, I think that works because then they come your way, and then you like can insert it there. So
yeah. Good. Yeah, that's. I mean, as I said, we could talk. We do another.
Yeah, we should do another one.
On that. But I guess I mean, let's talk about Klaro.
Yes.
I guess. Is it enterprise clients? No, this is a different world, right? So
no, I think who knows, right? Like we're very early. Like now, so the vision is very long.
Yeah, let's wind back, Klaro. So give me the the TLDR on the.
Well, I suppose I told you before that I love design, I love math. I wanted to design the next Ferrari.
Yeah.
This is my Ferrari. Like I feel like this is what I'm actually.
Yeah.
Because it comes down to ability to apply beautiful design and thinking to explain and make a concept easier for people to grasp and to make use of, which is numbers.
Yeah.
And I find that quantitative thinking is one of the greatest precursors to a good decision.
Yeah.
You can somewhat model the world, model what's happening, and play with that and try assumptions and essentially model out what could happen. Then you understand things better and you make a better decision.
Yeah. I mean, I remember like when we sat down here, we talked about it. It was like, how long ago was this? This was a few months back, right?
2 or 3 months, maybe so.
Like it was just one of those things. It was like, wow, this makes sense. This makes a lot of sense. It's like the Canva for analytics, right?
Canva for numbers. That's
Canva
right.
for numbers. Yeah. That's right.
Whenever I say that, people are like, oh yeah, that sounds cool.
Good. Yeah. But it's like it makes a lot of sense. And I filled out the when do I get access? Because I filled out the actual.
Yeah, I saw it come through.
Good.
It's very, very selective at the moment.
All right.
But if you, I mean, you know the founder, so you maybe
let's
skip a few notches on it.
Let's see how we go. What I said there was interesting because it got me thinking about it. I was like, why would Klaro make sense? It was like, I feel like every time I sit down to do this stuff, I'm building an Excel sheet from scratch.
Yes.
Like every time, right? Like, and it's like, you got one aspect of it, say, well, you got databases, all this sort of stuff. But there's a whole layer missing, right? There's a whole layer.
Yes.
I feel like that's kind of what you.
Yep. It's like a new form factor for how to do it. So, what is it actually? So we've got it first. We built a few versions of the product. Initially, it was just Google Sheet templates that I made available on LinkedIn, and I got first post had like 3,000 comments.
Yeah.
Second one 7,000. It's just basic template.
I remember seeing this. Like, whoa, this is Nick's new thing. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn shut me down because they thought like I was a bot or something. I was like, no,
really?
Everybody's adding me. Like I'm not doing anything. But so it went really well. And then I talked to these people, and a lot of them were like, because it was basic math. It's not even hard, but it's like the format of a spreadsheet and many other tools like make it really hard to express yourself. And you have to have it's not necessarily a high skill barrier. So you have to learn. Writing in a spreadsheet is essentially like writing code. So you have to learn how to do that. Secondly, which is underrated, you need to know how to structure the sheet. Yeah. So if you start writing randomly at some point, if you want to reuse that later, you have to have the structure from the beginning. Otherwise, you end up in this like mess, and you're like, oh my god, and then you can't really move things because if you move, it breaks. Yeah. So you not only do you have to know how to write formula, you also have to know how to lay out. Then lastly, even if you know how to do those two things, it looks like shit. So then you have to learn how to design as well. And designing in the spreadsheet is very hard, but that's why people like my spreadsheet. I just used whatever was there, made it tasteful, made it nice. Some features that people didn't know existed that you can use to make it look good. And a lot of people said, I like it because it just looks good. And then I want to use it, and also I understand it. So legibility is a very big piece. So,
and this is why templates are a big thing, right? This is why it's always about templates and stuff like this, but it's like,
I mean,
templates, it's like so like specific, and it's like you want to change one thing and whatnot. So it's like, again, like I've been in situations where I'm like, I want to do this analysis or this forecast or whatever. I mean, I think for so long we were using like for our financial forecasting, we were using like a template given to us by an angel investor, who ended up not even investing in the company. But he said to us, we need a financial forecast. So we said, okay, well, here's one. It's like, guys, I can't read it. Here, here's a template, like maybe something like this. Okay, so we put it in that exact template. He didn't end up investing, but that lived on for like 3 or 4 years within the business until we revamped it, right? Because but it's like 100%, as you said, like it's about looking at it, the design of it, and I think the one that you did, it was great. Like it was like forecasting, revenue forecasting. Was that right?
There was one around there was like 30 or so of them. Yeah, I mean different use cases.
That's the one I noted. It was like revenue forecasting. You had like just little things like the bunny rabbit and the tortoise and all
the
this.
market size. Yeah, the market size.
Market size. Yeah. So little things like that make all the difference, right? Like when you look at a sheet. I mean, this is. I guess it's known. It's a known thing, right? It's like how you present it. It's like I always say to the team, it's like you want to be, why make the slide deck look nice? It's because like you want to be like starting here.
Yeah.
Not starting here and trying to convince up. You want to be starting here. So it's like if you're doing those analytics or you're presenting that sort of stuff to people, it's like if it looks good, that's half the battle. Like they're like, okay, this
they have
good.
confidence in you that you put together and all this.
Effort, yeah, you put effort into it, right? Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, and then I think that's one aspect. Like it's the barrier entry unnecessarily hard. The other one is exactly what you're talking about, which is you feel like you're starting from scratch, and it's so funny how a product that take a spreadsheet for example, it gets worse over time. Like it should get better. It should get more easily. But then you actually
you've got 20 tabs there. Where's the
lots of files?
You can't even search the tabs.
You don't even know what they are. So so it gets worse over time. Like it doesn't make any sense. So for us when building it, we want the product to get better over time, which means content that is accessible and features that are adapting to how you're using the product, contextually relevant actions. Obviously AI is going to play a role, but it should get better over time. I don't think AI needs to get anywhere any further than where it is now necessarily for us to be able to apply it meaningfully, because it already knows. I don't need it to know more things about the universe. I need it to know things about you, how you do things. So then you need to design a user interface that allows the AI to learn those things, allows you to work with it so that it learns, and it can then build things that make sense for you. That's probably the context is the more important aspect that AI needs to train on, as opposed to lots of random facts about stuff.
I was thinking about this. I was sleeping on it last night because I'm like, because the thing about Klaro is like, what does AI mean for Klaro? It's like, so one angle is like, there's one angle of everything. You don't need anything because you've got Klaro, right?
Yes.
Or you've got AI, sorry. You don't need anything at all, right? So that's one perspective. But I think, I was like, actually, you know what? I had the same thought. I was like, you build that out now and the AI capability that you have today, combining that with what you're doing with the concept of Klaro, I think you've got something great probably very quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean, we raised money recently, not official yet, but we talked to a number of investors. We got a really good crew together. I feel like I got the best possible backing now. So really smart people that believe in this vision and want to be on the journey with us. But some said no. And some of them were like, AI, what's AI going to do? And they honestly, in my opinion, didn't really have necessarily a view. But one view that some did have.
Well, it was like, what's AI going to do? I don't know. What's AI going to do? I don't know. And then
the most default thing now is a spreadsheet. The two biggest giants, they're going to plug their AI into that, and it's going to be a superpower, and it's available for free. I'm like, yep. All right, so you're going to try and compete with that. Yeah, to a degree, but not for I'm not going to replace spreadsheet. They have their own. They're wonderful as a database and stuff as well. We're not necessarily a database, but my point was, the form factor is still stuck in a spreadsheet. Even if AI produces formulas, it's still formulas, isn't it?
Yes.
So that you can't reuse. Yeah. So, and you still end up in an entangled mess. So yes, maybe AI can help you get out of it more easily, but it's not changing how you do stuff.
Yeah.
For example, is AI going to make it nicer to look on the phone? I don't think so, because it's still a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that are you're already saying, okay, so if you're going to start a company now, when you have the most powerful technology appear in the last decade, and you're saying you're going to build the exact same product and plug it into it, why would you do that? You would build a new product that has new paradigms that are much more aligned with that allows for all these better aspects that I just talked about.
Yeah.
To me, that's a much better bet. Am I wrong? Maybe, but at least I'm contrarian. And if I'm right, I'm right in a big way. So we'll see. We'll see.
I guess, and for me, it seems like the I mean, because I guess the thing about Canva, like everyone would have said the same about Canva, right? How are you going for time?
Yeah, let me just check.
We're going great guns here, but we probably need to wrap up, right?
Yeah, because I got a coffee. The Naked Duck, is that close to here? It's supposed to be at 3.
Not too sure.
Yeah, it's just sort of next door, so I need to get there.
All right,
wrap up in a few minutes.
Yeah. So I guess like because everyone would have said sort of I guess the same about Canva and PowerPoint in a lot of ways. Like I feel like is it like I guess the usability, the interface, how it's presented. That's really what you're shooting for, right? So I feel like a lot of those back end technologies actually play into your.
That's right.
Your I guess one quote I guess from I remember thinking about that AI space. It was Altman saying, well, if you're building a business that gets replaced by AI getting better, then you're not building, maybe you're not building a good business.
Yes.
If AI can improve what you're building, then that's you might have a future, right? And I think this feels very much in that space where it's like improved AI technologies. The LLMs will only help what's happening. But I don't know. I wanted to ask about this. I mean, GPT-5 is coming out in a year and a half apparently, which blew my mind. That's wild. That seems like that's so long for software. I don't know what you make.
It just keeps like there's new ones all the time. I mean, it's also we're so conditioned to think in a certain way. Like you just can't imagine anything else. Like it's always a spreadsheet. We might be interface version of it, but it's always this, right? It's so we're so conditioned, and like, I mean, I'm not sure who invented the water, but I'm sure it wasn't the fish. So you have all these people that try in the same space I'm at. They're all coming from the point of view where they're so conditioned. And they're building tools for themselves, but there's this world of people who are not in the finance industry, not in the technical industry, that it seems like everybody's forgotten about. Like, what about everybody else who doesn't like come from that, who's painstakingly learned the coding or something?
100%. Because the other thing I was thinking, like, I mean, if you think about like your competitors, like, well, who are they? I mean, things I think about, say, like Tableau and Look, they've got the UI component, but it's very technical, right? Like you can build certain things in there.
Yeah, it's a database. It's a BI database tool, right?
Yes,
And you have other modern spreadsheets, so they're going to have its place. I'm not saying like there's a place for that. But it's funny because some people will get excited, like, oh, Canva for numbers. What's that? Is that like a spreadsheet? No, it's not. Oh, what is it then? Because but when you see it, you will know.
Yeah. No, it's exciting, man. And I guess my feeling when we talked to you, I was like, to me, it seems like it's going to be a long journey in a sense, but it can be accelerated. But like it's like that probably that 80-20 as well. Like you'll get sort of 80% of the way with 20% of the effort, and then it's like that last little bit and the tailorings and stuff like that. But I guess the demo you showed me, I was like, oh man, this is awesome. So where are you at in the product cycle? Like when can we see example? You're raising at the moment. I think you're on the way with that. You're having some good success now. You're going to move in here as well, which is great. Right. So we can do part 2
part 2.
In 6 months time, 12 months time.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
What's the trajectory of the future look like for the product in the next?
Well, so first of all, now we want to get it out to our alpha users. So we got like 10 or 20 or so alpha users who's going to be the first ones to see the next version of the product. We built already 2-3 versions that we've scrapped and then rebuilt, and so we've iterated a lot already. But then we have a version now which is more like built to last, so they will see that. We have like 6,000 people on the wait list, something like that. So like we don't want to like make it about.
Don't forget, mate.
No. But you're on the alpha now, so it's different. So we're gonna do that and work a lot on the primitives. So like blocks and like what are the primitives? So what are the building blocks of this new world of Lego essentially? Like how do you what are the characteristics?
And you got the co-founder as well, or just you?
So just me, just me. And then I got a founding engineer who's joined now very recently, Farley, who's like absolute guns. Like he's amazing. So 2 of us at the moment, and then we're looking to maybe expand with another 1 or 2 engineers in the near future. But we're going to keep the team very small and high caliber and small, which I think is more than ever a very valid approach with AI and stuff, really multiplying your efforts. You don't need lots of people.
100%. Yeah, the amount you can get
and it's just much faster.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like, we've shrunk the team significantly, but honestly, like I would say, like our productivity is probably about 3x. Just with the AI tools today, it's incredible, right? So I guess, conscious of time, so maybe let's leave it there. And I guess maybe, I'd love to touch base. And this was great.
It was awesome.
I had so much fun. Maybe like in 12 months time, whenever it makes sense, you'll be here so we can just sit down again. Maybe you'll be doing the hosting because you'll be ready to list.
I might return the favor.
Yeah, that's right. But I guess, maybe some tidbits, I guess, from your journey. Like, I guess, entrepreneurial? Like we had a couple of notes there that you wanted to share, I guess, around like some of the advice that you're a bit of a seasoned entrepreneur now. You're going through this new journey, you're having success, I know it's not announced yet, but on the way, right? What are some pieces of advice you'd give to, I guess, budding entrepreneurs in the space?
Yeah, okay. So maybe keep it short. I think that there's a lot of advice out there, and I'm not saying I know all of it, but I think two things that I really think is important to talk about, that's not talked about enough, is when it comes to your team, it's not about getting the most out of people, it's about getting the best out of people. And the way you get the most out of people is pushing them always on, we're working hard and just slogging at a wall, just work. But to get the best out of people, you need to get to know them. You need to know what they like, you need to know what their passions are, you need to know what makes them excited and why they're here on this planet to do stuff. What is it that they're here to do? And if you understand them, then you know how to get the best out of them because you know what they really like, and you know what they don't like, and you know what is uncomfortable. So I implore anyone who, especially in an entrepreneurial sense, because a team matters more than anything, make sure that you take that approach and understand them as people. So I think that's probably my first piece that I've learned.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And it's interesting to hear that. I guess it's something that, again, it's probably, I agree with what you said. It's not talked about enough, that piece, right?
That's right.
Definitely, yeah.
Let me just check quickly when I message this person.
1 hour 20, mate. There you go. It's been a good session.
Yeah. She's right. I need to go probably in a minute. And I suppose the second one is get your reps in. Do the reps.
That's what they say in jiu-jitsu. It's a good advice.
I think that's what they're saying in any sport.
Yes.
Get the reps in. You can't escape the reps. So if you want to be really good at something, you got to do the reps. And people think that inspiration and passion is very important, absolutely, but it's nothing compared to discipline. And inspiration is kind of the reward of working every day. Then you get inspiration. So I think get the reps in, do the uncomfortable stuff, and small things this going to be a very challenging journey. A lot of entrepreneurship is really hard, and if you want to be ready for the really tough challenges, well, do the small challenges every day then. Take a cold shower. Oh, it's very uncomfortable. I don't like it. Well, if you're not ready for the small challenge, how are you going to be ready for the big one? You're just not. Yeah. So do the reps also for that reason. So do the reps.
Good. Speaking about, where are you saunering at the moment? I need to come and join this.
There's plenty of spots. I'll send you the list after this. I don't want to reveal all the secret spots. We like our saunas non-crammed and quiet. So.
All right. Sounds good. All right, we'll leave it there. I know you got to go, mate. So thanks. It's been great. And I look forward to the next one already. So, and looking forward to Klaro and seeing you here at Stone and Chalk soon.
Yep, looking forward to it too, mate.